It is time to chat hurling, and I'm delighted to be joined by Brennan and Sarah O'Donovan. The National Hurling Leagues got underway last weekend. Cork seeing off Wexford pretty comfortably on Saturday, and then on Sunday, Kilkenny edging Clare in an All-Ireland semi-final rematch, while Tipperary had a fairly comprehensive win over Galway. But guys, we're going to start with some TV controversy. Usually we have to wait kind of midsummer before Live Line is lighting up with people talking about Cork and Limerick and it not being available to stream or live on terrestrial television. So this Saturday night, Cork Limerick is throwing in at 7:30 in Porky Queeve. Already 30,000 tickets sold. TG4 the first pick. They went with Dublin Donegal. RT at the second pick in a 6 o'clock time slot. Cork were reluctant to move it earlier because of the Ireland versus England Six Nations game. So RT went with Armagh versus Tyrone. It looked like there would be no footage at all unless you were actually in Porky Queeve, a way of seeing Cork versus Limerick. Now some sort of compromise, I guess, is it's going to be streamed on the TG4 website. But not an ideal situation, Eddie, for hurling. It's probably the marquee league fixture until the final. Cork Limerick played out two absolute belters last summer. And there's no live hurling on any terrestrial station over the weekend. I know streaming is one thing, but it's not the same as sitting down, turning on your television and being exposed to that. What have you made of this playing out? As I said, usually we have to wait for a couple of months for this to kick off.
Yeah, I think I remember, was it a couple of years ago when we had Sky involved, and I remember one evening Kilkenny were playing Waterford, and for some reason I was not able to get up to Thurles. And I remember just kind of saying, oh, here, do you know what, update your Sky package and just get it for the sake of whatever it was. And at least you had it there. You had it, you could see it. So I suppose that being the key point here, you either go to matches or you watch it. And I think we all, hearing a lot of the commentary on it, we've been starved of games for so long to a certain degree. It's the off season and it's the commencement of the new season. So straight away, you just want to feast into a couple of good hurling matches. And we were lucky up to now. You kind of had great coverage of the club finals and that. Brilliant. Again, TG4, always, churning out the good stuff. But it's just, I suppose, there's a lot of things going on here, but it's just actually hard to credit that it, I worked with RT for a while. I understand the whole thing of, well, every match can't be shown. There's only so many cameras. There's only so much this and that. But surely to God, this wasn't the first time that they saw all these fixtures coming down the track, and that now at this late hour we're finding out, kind of this week it won't be covered anywhere really, and there might be some coverage of it. It's fierce disappointing, and I'm not going to start turning around and we're firing scuds at everybody and says everyone's fault and throwing the ties out of pram. But it's actually really, really hard to believe that this is only manifesting now and coming out to us all. I'm sure RT and this was going on. There's obviously they sit down and they decide what they're going to show. But I suppose does it bring the question back into place that our competition is starting too early? We're colliding with too many things. There's a kind of a time and a place for everything, or there should be, our season. And there's so many layers that you could look at with it and say there's so many things to this argument saying, okay, maybe if the league was starting slightly later, or the hurling season now is, you're arguably starting in the most unglamorous or training through the worst time of the year to be hurling. But bringing it back to the main point, this is a match that when you look at how they went and collided last year, they served up two of the best matches of the year, absolutely. Well, it would be a great second weekend to have this. And even last weekend, the Kilkenny Clare match was only deferred coverage on TG4. And I know, look, everyone has to get their bit, the hurling, the football, mixing and matching over and back. But Jesus, this would have been surely seen as a prime fixture. And, you'd like to think that there was a bit more done to get this one shown on television. And to some degree, I can understand Cork and Limerick not wanting to change it because you're now clashing. And that's something that we're doing. We're clashing with the big sport events. And I think it's a bigger debate because you look at now, am I right in saying the All-Ireland hurling final is played the same Sunday as the last day of the British Open as well? Like, okay, we have to go about our national sports as number one. But because of the condensed season and the decision taken to do that, this is becoming a little bit more popular. And unfortunately, look, it's our club people and people at home that can't make these fixtures that are the ones to lose out on that, because that will be a match that everyone would love to be able to sit in on Saturday evening and take it in.
Yeah, and I actually think when Cork played Clare in that unbelievable final last year, I think it was the final day of the Open as well, Lowry wasn't quite in contention, but he wasn't that far off either. On another day, that could have caused all sorts of problems with people trying to watch both. Yeah, like to be fair to RTE, it's kind of TG4 had the first pick in that 7:30 time slot and went with Dublin Donegal. So they opted to show Jim McGuinness with the new rules in Dublin, which meant that it was kind of a little tough for RTE then because they had the 6 o'clock time slot. Cork didn't want to clash with the rugby, so I suppose the roundabout solution is that it'll be streamed online. But Sarah, not an ideal situation. I know you're going to be in Porky Queeve. It's great to see such a big crowd. It shows the appetite is still there to watch, even if it's a league match, these two rivals go head to head. It's probably one of hurling's premier rivalries at the moment, if not the best.
Couple of big games on a Saturday night in Páirc Uí Chaoimh. Kilkenny was great last year. Limerick, obviously, in May was phenomenal. Cork, people love a Saturday night fixture, and I rarely agree with Kevin O'Donovan. But I did agree with him. I didn't think it should clash with the England rugby game. I agree with his point. It should be a 7:30 p.m. game. It's a case of streaming it, as Eddie said. If there's a pocket on TV where it can be found, put it on. And the 30,000 people who are going to the game will enjoy the game. And those who can't will enjoy the game as well. And they will fork out a tenner to watch it on, and that commercial piece will be covered off. So it feels like a really casual approach from the GA, from TG Cahir, from RTE and from Cork. It doesn't seem like Limerick had much to do with it. They seem to just have had to roll with the punches, but it does feel like a very casual approach to a situation that requires more focus on it. Really, really does.
Yeah,
it's a great opportunity to kind of promote again, roll into the year hard with a big fixture. And it just looks like we're missing a trick in that regard. And like you said there, I suppose casual, is a word that probably describes it, like that you're saying, God, lads, really, we're turning down this after the epic night in Páirc Uí Chaoimh last year?
Well, there's no way Dublin versus Kerry would be streamed only, which is, this is where Cork Limerick these days is kind of that, maybe not the historical significance, but certainly in terms of modern day, how they've gone toe to toe. That would never be put just merely on a streaming.
To throw it in even further there, and I know, look, we're mindful of schedules and what people are doing, and I've spoken about this a number of times in relation to your competition, the round robin structure type competition, which is brilliant for the top teams in Munster playing each other, top teams in Leinster. But again, what about a Friday night fixture? Would a Friday night fixture have possibly? And I know the guys have to get their rest. To be fair, the players have to be central in the decision making of that. They're getting, some of these guys are playing Fitzgibbon during the week, but just as regards missing that trick, and I know they can't cover everything, but let's try get as much out there. Like I love the idea of a Friday night game. I think it's a brilliant concept going forward, especially when you have all these league matches. Generally, they're Sundays, but like as Sarah said there, like for the people that get to go there, you'd love to be going down, be a brilliant game. But if not, the next best thing is sit in there on a Saturday evening when it's cold and you can watch that match and enjoy it.
Yeah, there's a sociability piece to it too, lads. If the pubs in these parts of West Cork, West Limerick, they have it on the TV, people will come in to watch it, and it's a community piece, and the GA is all about community. They're depriving groups of people who can't make the journey down an opportunity to watch it. And I know C103 will be streaming it, on the radio for people in Cork to be able to hear it, but it's not the same. It's just not the same. And if you're looking at the fixtures this weekend, you've Kilkenny Galway, Tip Wexford, Cork Limerick. It's a no-brainer. That was the game that should have eyes on it.
Yeah, as I said, it's the best round robin league fixture until the final, and it's just a pity that it's not going to be shown on terrestrial TV. They announced the Munster Championship fixtures today. The Munster final will be on a Saturday night as well. I'm already looking forward to the atmosphere wherever that might be played. I think if it is a Cork versus Limerick rematch, I think it's due to be in Limerick because that's the rotation. So it won't be a Saturday night throw in Páirc Uí Chaoimh if those two teams meet, but it would be good nonetheless. Sarah, 30,000 tickets sold for Saturday. Does that mean that Cork fans are kind of over their period of mourning from last year's All-Ireland final, that they're ready to embrace 2025 and all the possibilities it has to offer?
We're still thinking about it. We're still thinking about the last gasp opportunity for Cork to have a replay. I was at UCC and Cork in the Canon O'Brien Cup, okay? The players were obviously looking to make an impression that day. You'd Cork lads, one stage Declan Dalton's through on goal and Robbie Cotter doesn't give him a pass and Declan Dalton balls him out of it, right? Now this is start of January. there's nothing in this game. Cork are up, I think, by 12, 15 points, but the Cork lads are absolutely itching to get to the pitch to make amends. And I think the Cork fans are so eager to see them do this, to finally get over the line. We're talking 20 years. 20 years ago, Cork won the All-Ireland. I didn't think I'd be 40 by the time Cork won it next. And that's really, really sad. It's 27 years since we won a National League title. We're just looking for something to celebrate.
Yeah, Eddie, like this time of year isn't traditionally kind to Cork. As Sarah said, whatever the All-Ireland drought back to 1998 for their last National League, it is said that this kind of weather doesn't suit Cork's style. But would it be a meaningful thing to target, do you think, on the road for this team? Would getting National League silverware, like they had 9 guys that started against Clare in the finals, playing and starting against Wexford last Saturday. So Pat Ryan did go with a pretty strong team. Do you think it'd be worthwhile for them to really go for this league?
It is. I think when you're close and you're knocking on the door a little bit, sometimes it can be a little piece of silverware. And again, this is the third or the outside of the All Ireland and the Munster Championship. This is the next best piece of silverware that any team could win. Historically, the league has been very, very beneficial to us in Kilkenny. We always looked at it as a focus. And again, there was different arguments in that. Well, you maybe don't want to show your hands now with the current structure. You kind of didn't want to show your hands as such, maybe because they're coming so quick behind it. I think we had it a few years ago where was it Clare and Waterford maybe met close enough and they were meeting again 2 weeks later in the Munster Championship, and there was kind of that cat and mouse thing. But I just think with where Cork stand right here, right now, I think Pat Ryan would love a league title, because you're going to have to beat a serious clatter of teams to get to that league final. And then once you get to a league final, regardless to what it is, regardless to what's 2 or 3 weeks away down the track, you're into a final that finals are just, they're not there to participate, end of. So if you can turn around now, and particularly where Cork sit right here, right now, if they can get a piece of silverware into the bag heading into the Munster Championship, that could be just that little missing piece of just another bit of confidence to get a job done, to get over the line. It could be just another little shot of adrenaline into them guys going into and say, look, we had to come through a league campaign, we had to beat Limerick, Cork, Kilkenny, Tip, whatever, all the way down into a league final, whoever you beat in that league final. So it would be a welcome boost. And like I said, from my experiences with it, the league always stood us in good health. It generates competition too. What Pat Ryan wants is he wants to find a few new players. But equally too, with the way the championship is coming so close behind the league, if you were a guy that was wearing 8, 9, 14, 3, whatever number it is, you want to really, this is the time of year where attitude is key. How a player, approaches league and the dirty, rotten conditions is something that a manager would put a lot of value in. And you want your guys that are saying that they were the 15, where you get selfish in a way. The player has to be selfish and say, no, you're not having my jersey. And you want to create that internal war in your training paddock where lads are going to war with each other, trying to vie in to get into that team. And I'd imagine that more than ever, Sarah said it there, 20 years, we're not exactly crying in Kilkenny that that's after happening. but we're not far behind you ourselves at the moment. We've had a pretty barren patch when it comes to, Liam McCarthy and that. But I just think you need that competition. You need that coming through your squad, and that's how you springboard forward. And I think Cork could do with this, because it might be just something that gives them another little lift going into championship. And look, Pat Ryan, sure, it's no matter what it is. If you win the league, grand, we've seen a few years ago. Yeah, you move on to the next phase. Now it's all about the championship. And come the end of the year, if you don't have a good year on the back of the league, it can be somewhat dismissed. But other times then you can say, well, that league campaign stood us in real good health going into the championship.
Yeah, well, Clare won it last year, the league, beating Kilkenny in the final, and obviously went on to win the All-Ireland. But it's an interesting balancing act, Sarah. Like Eddie's point about the confidence a league title would give Cork. At the same time, I mentioned the Munster fixtures were announced. They have Clare away in their first round robin game, a battle of the All-Ireland finalists to kick things off. So if Clare take a different approach to the league and they're easing guys back in, as it looks like they are, I think they had very few of their All-Ireland finalists playing against Kilkenny at the weekend. If Cork were to go kind of more hell for leather, and then they play in Cusack Park and Ennis, and they'll have come at very different kind of stages, it would be interesting to see who would be more beneficial to how they handle the league.
Yeah, so Clare started 4 of their All-Ireland winning team last Sunday, and Cork started 9 on Saturday night. I felt watching the Clare-Kilkenny game that Clare would have got more out of their game against Kilkenny than Cork got out of their game against Wexford. Now, let's take Wexford out of it. They were no opposition for Cork. But if you look at what Clare got out of their bench, you'd Paddy Donnellan with 2 points, you'd Keith Smith with 2 points, you'd David Conroy with 3 points from play from obviously a starting position. The Cork players in the periphery of the Cork setup haven't got the same exposure so far. And I'm wondering, will Pat Ryan go with it, try and win the league outright, not give those periphery players exposure? Whereas Clare, giving those periphery players exposure, will they be in, better stead come the championship? And that is the balancing act, as you say, that he will have to find. I personally prefer to try and balance it in a way that Cork can find new players and also win a National League. And I don't know, Eddie, is that possible?
Yeah, I think you have to, it's probably blending it, and that's the decision making that a manager has to sit down probably in advance of the league. Like now you're looking at all these situations. It's no longer just rolling from week to week and saying, right, who's showing up well in training or anything like that. You have to look at it from the point of view of exposing lads to this level. And I think the intensity levels are right up this year. The pace at which Clare started the other day was impressive. Cork again the same. Like there's no waiting around, because I suppose at the back of all this too, you have the financial benefit of being in the top division as well. You're getting the big gates. Like you look at Limerick and Cork now this weekend. Like that's a huge injection for Cork this weekend to know that there's 30,000 people already going to Simple Stadium. So that's at the back of the league campaign. You say, well, before you mightn't have been too pushed about dropping back, but as regards getting the balance right, I think you have to. If you're a young guy and you want to get in and show, put your hand up and show to the manager you have the stuff to do it, I think it's easier to do that with a couple of good lads around you, a couple of seasoned lads around you. So I remember, was it a few years ago, Limerick had, one in each line. So if you're Adam English, you're getting to play midfield beside Willie O'Donoghue, and you have, Hannah and Kyle Hayes behind you, and you have Hegarty in front of you, and you have, Houlihan then taking the free. So he's a novice in there with, maybe Garrod Hegarty and Tom Morrissey in the half forward line. So that would be the ideal blend. Whereas it's very difficult to go out if you're a 7 or 8 newbies. And like Wexford had a little bit of that the other night as well. But Clare had it, and Clare, I agree with Sarah, hugely beneficial for Clare to have that blend. I thought Clare impressed me the other day, some of the striking, and they've huge competition now within that squad. Historically, they haven't been able to retain All-Irelands, but I just thought, to me, there was little signs already, I'd say, this year that Brian Lohan, he has built a good squad, and he's the perfect example of being able to. Last year, he had a lot of players played in that league, and now they have a good, strong squad out of that. It was evidenced in the All-Ireland final where all but 2 of his bench were used in that match. So that's probably the far away picture of it. But again, for a manager, you do have to sit down and say, I need to see 7, 8 of these guys and see what they're made of. No more than Kilkenny, I suppose. The prime example being, Finan Maxey had to be seen. I think Derek is right. Throw him in there, get 3 or 4 games under his belt, and see what he has, and then you can see about blending it after that.
Yeah, just before I get your opinion on Kilkenny, Eddie, Sarah, I want to finish off just on Cork Limerick, just on the Limerick side of it. Like, this is the first year we've entered where Limerick haven't been defending All-Ireland champions since 2020, like since before COVID, which shows how long their kind of reign of dominance lasted until Cork knocked them out last year. Cian Lynch is the captain, taking over from Declan Hannon. Nicky Quaid is missing for the foreseeable, if not the entire year, with that ACL injury. So there's a couple of changes there. Like, what are you expecting to see from them, on Saturday night against one of their big rivals, but then generally as they kind of make their way back into 2025?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, Nicky Quaid is the big loss there for Limerick, I think. And the restart Saturday night will be really interesting, and whether John Kiley goes with Jason Gillan or whether he goes with Shane
Dowling.
I don't think that's been announced yet, has it? I know that Padge Collins was speaking yesterday, and he was very confident that Jason Gillan would get in ahead of Dowling. The restarts will be massive, because that's been a massive key for Limerick in the last 5 years in terms of how they turn teams over and how they win games. A possible change at centre back, kind of interesting as well. But look, we've seen Will O'Donoghue slot in there previously. I thought Darragh O'Donovan missing last year was a big issue for Limerick, and obviously John Kiley chose not to play him when he wasn't fit. But again, another player that I think will be itching to get back in. Where does Cahill O'Neill play? I love Shane O'Brien, lads. I think he's quality. He scored 1-8 against Mary I last week. I think they have to find a place for him. And I think possibly last year they missed a step when they put Seamus Flanagan ahead of him, because I think Shane O'Brien was the kind of the marquee forward in the Munster final. And I would have put him in. That would have been my choice as manager. So I think John Kiley has massive options. And then you're talking about the periphery players again, the likes of Adam English, the likes of Colin Coughlin. He has so many options, and I think there's massive competition in there.
And that's one, just to make that point, Will, I think that of all the lads, you talk about blending and giving lads a bit of a go time. I think that's where John Kiley is at. I think he definitely needs a little bit of freshness into that team. You could argue that he has his tried and trusted lieutenants, which have absolutely earned the right over the previous few years. But then that comes down to the quintessential thing with a manager in the position as long as he has, with as much success, is now when is the time to start, giving these new lads a little go? Can he inject a bit of energy into the team? Is that going to be the difference? Because when you're there as long as they are, and they are phenomenal, you then suddenly become a little bit more closely scrutinised and analysed, and now teams are starting to find a way to get at them. So Kiley and co have to find another way of blending that team, or just a few little tweaks here and there, particularly now with probably freshness. But I will say one point on Limerick. If Limerick have their reputation and their legacy is intact, right? So they're that's there. It's secure. They don't have to worry about it. But I do think that when you do get popped and you get knocked out and you've had what they've had, I think now the hunger and the scary thing is this could be the end of it, lads. So that could be a powerful motivator for them boys. I think if they were to come back and win an All-Ireland this year, that would be the sweetest one of all probably for them, because now the question marks come around you. Are we gone? Are we bet? Or do doubts start to creep in? But it'll either, it would possibly sting these boys into life. And central to that is going to be blending in new lads and creating another level of competition that they haven't probably seen. And they had savage competition within their own squad for the last few years.
Yeah, well, it's interesting to hear you say that, Eddie, because obviously your Kilkenny team, after missing out on the 5 in a row, I think you won 4 of the next 5 All-Ireland. So you're kind of well placed to speak to, I suppose, the power that, having that heartbreak can kind of drive you on.
Yeah, it should. I mean, as anyone that has played the game, Sarah, we all know that you lose more than you win often and often. So therefore, it either drives you and you say, well, was that what was kind of constantly bringing this Clare team back for the couple of years, and they got the reward last year, that they'd never give up, they never threw in the towel. But when you're hurt, I mean, that's where, for a manager, like John Kiley probably doesn't need to go and give these boys a massive pep talk at the start of the year about where they stand in the hurling world. I would imagine the players themselves, and they're a good age profile, 1 or 2 of them pushing on a little bit. They have a lot of mileage in the clock. But when you look at the central spine of that squad now, a lot of them are around they're between 28 and 30, which is, again, your peak physical fitness for a lot of guys, and experience-wise, they have it all.
Yeah, well, it's interesting to see how they start off against Cork in Páirc Uí Chaoimh after losing to them twice last year. Obviously, will they be raring to go? Will they be easing their way in? I suppose we'll see.
Yeah, lads. I suppose my worry with Cork is, and they talk about having 3 or 4 different players in every position, and the massive strength and depth. I think Cork don't have man markers in the vein of Adam Hogan, in the vein of Mikey Butler, and I don't think that they found them in the off season. And I think they're really limited in terms of what they have in terms of actual man markers. And I don't think you'd fancy marking the likes of Aaron Gillan, Seamus Flanagan, Shane O'Brien, if you're threadbare and you're looking to the line and saying who's going to come in and do a job for us. So I think that's Cork's weakness. And that's the big thing for Cork for 2025 is defensively, you can't be intermittent defenders, and you can't be naive either. And they showed up in games last year that they were very naive. And I read an article with Wayne Sherlock during the week, and he was talking about, his time with Cork. And he mentions you, Eddie, actually, and how you met a couple of times afterwards. And he said he never scotched any corner forwards in his life, but he always attacked the ball. And I think the Cork cornerbacks especially are under massive scrutiny because we just haven't found that teak tough defensive system that say the likes of Clare and Limerick and Kilkenny have shown to have in the last couple of years.
Yeah, you have to be really resolute, don't you? Primary, first and foremost, shut it down. Just they're the kind of defenders that you don't like marking. First and foremost, if you have a guy and you look at that Cork team of 04-05, they were, like, as a defensive unit, they were so solid. And look, you'd say Cork have some real quality players in that squad, but possibly the one narrative that kind of constantly keeps coming up is that can they grind it out? Can they shut down an opposition? They've shown they've been able to do it to Limerick a bit last year. They've been close in a lot of matches, but I think it's that to see to win your championship, your defensive unit has to be first and foremost, and I mean this in a good sense, really, really shower dogs that they're just going, you're getting not enough of us today.
Well, it'll be interesting to see how that matchup shapes up on Saturday. Eddie, Kilkenny then, 23 points to 21 victors over Clare. We kind of touched on maybe what Clare got out of it, some experience into some new players, easing some of the All-Ireland winners back. But what did you make of Kilkenny? Where would you assess where they're at in terms of catching up to the top of the pack?
Yeah, well, there was a few. It was probably concerning after 8 minutes. Clare had, I think, 8 or 9 points on the board. You're like, oh no. Billy Drennan had a couple of tough frees. Obviously conditions were completely different than what I could see on television. They were obviously, and Ennis can be like that a bit, but the surface seemed to be good for the time of year and the weather. But Kilkenny looked to be very sluggish. You didn't know whether it was, just the heavy block of training, which sometimes can make you very heavy-legged during the league. But they stuck at it, which they always will do, and they will find their period of when they figured out Clare a little bit. And they started to get on top. They found ways then to attack, but it's hard to gauge it. But I just know, again, historically, Derek will have put a nice bit of value on going to Ennis. We put huge value on going to Ennis years ago. Brian Cody seen it as a real benchmark of where we were at to go down there in 2002 and play them back again. I think 2005, we went down at the start of 2004, 2005. Again, real edgy matches with plenty on the line, and it's where you learn it. And sure, look, they're All-Ireland champions as well. And I think, first and foremost, Clare jumped out at me. I was very impressed. I was impressed even with the speed at which I saw several times that match where they seemed to gain ground on a Kilkenny lad running away from them with possession. They were able to make up that ground and put pressure on them. And Brian Lohan clearly has them in a sweet spot because they looked like, again, I use the pack of hungry dogs at the start of that match. They were chasing down everything. They were aggressive. They put a real press on the Kilkenny backs when they were coming out short. But Kilkenny stuck at it, figured it out, and again, he used his bench well. Mossy Keown obviously was the standout performer. He was brilliant. His work rate was savage. But the shape of the Kilkenny team, I think Paddy Deegan going up there, I like that. I think it's something that Paddy has so much energy. For me, he needs to be around that middle third. He's capable of defending, absolutely. But I think he gives you more. You get more bang for your buck off Paddy up there with energy-wise. And the shape of the defence then as well, like you still have David Blanchfield and Hughie 3 and 6 is probably what you're looking at. Mikey Carey, excellent as your modern wing back now, doing his defensive duties, but getting forward and creating scores. And again, just to mention the Kerry import, I'm pleased to see Finnan getting in there and getting his game. I hope the injury is not too serious. I think Kilkenny had to go find out what this guy is about, blend him in with the team quickly enough, mix and match him and put him into these matches because he obviously played at a really good standard. He played with O'Loughlin's. He's now stepped up to the elite level of hurling, and that's where you want to see him adjust. And physically, there's no questions there. Again, very mobile, big, tall guy, able to pick a score. But the shape of the Kilkenny team would obviously, be revealed as we go along. But again, you can see, maybe 12, 13 positions, and then it's where he blends them. But again, looking at, he has all his bar TJ, a lot of lads are there. There's no real getting the league off. Kilkenny have to go find the squad and settle down a really consistent 15 now, and then build your squad because they have a lot of young guys there, a few departures with retirement.
Yeah, not that it'll necessarily ease the pain, but after losing the All-Ireland semi-final and the league final to Clare, probably a little bit of sweetness to go to Ennis and to get that win. The other game was Tipperary 325, Galway 216. A very comprehensive win for what was a really young Tipperary team. I think only 2 starters from the 2019 final when they beat Kilkenny played. So very much, a young, youth-infused team. Sam O'Farrell, Dylan Walsh, Andrew Ormond, Michael Corcoran, who did pick up, I think, a slight injury as well, all showed promise. But there's actually some Liam Cahill quotes I want to read to you guys and just get your thoughts on it, kind of addressing the media afterwards. And he said, "There will be ups and downs in this campaign. I think the knowledgeable people that know the landscape in Tipperary will understand that. It's about patience as well, and I know that's not going to cut much slack with the impatient, less knowledgeable hurling folk out there in Tipperary. I'd ask the Tip supporters to be brave and come out and support the team. There's not much bravery in going up to Croke Park every year over the last decade for All-Ireland semi-finals and All-Ireland finals and all that. That's the easy thing to do." So, Sarah, kind of sending a message to the Tipperary fans. Obviously, last year, Tip didn't get out of Munster. A young team on show at the weekend getting the win, but Liam Cahill very much trying to kind of, I suppose, set the tone for the year in some ways. I don't know. Well, what did you make of those comments?
It felt very much like you're either with us or against us. And if you want to be with us, then you have to show us support in the dark days and the good days. And look, if you remember last year, Tipperary had some very unfortunate instances, and in the previous years, like they've been on the back of some roastings, and then they played some very good hurling. There's no question that the quality isn't there. And when you look at their minor setups and their under 20 setups and the players that are coming through, they do need time. But the Tipperary hurling supporters aren't a patient group. And I was speaking about it during the week, and I was saying he does need momentum in the league. Because even from a player's point of view, the confidence that they would gain from those games, and you could see Willie Connors and Ronan Maher were lifting Saturday night when they were on the TV afterwards. They were so relieved that the team had put a performance together. And what that means in training this week is massive to Liam Cahill, I think. And while I say it's quite... Sometimes it can be hard, like you've gone out and you've spoken to the public in such a public way, and if there's a backlash, it comes in the Munster Championship because they'll be slow to forget what he said in the league. So he's kind of bringing a lot of pressure on himself, but he's also taking it off the players, I think.
Yeah, and those Munster fixtures I alluded to earlier, like they start with Limerick at home and Cork away the first 2 weekends, so it could be a very tough start potentially. Eddie, you said you weren't shedding too many tears for Cork's All-Ireland drought. I suppose you're probably not that disappointed to hear Tipperary maybe talking like this as well?
It's sure. Look, it gives us something to talk about. It's grand if you're in a position where you're making snowballs and you can pelt them away, but we're not in Kilkenny in that position. So, look, with Liam, I think it's. They say that preaching in your own parish is the toughest place of all. I heard Mickey Hart saying that I think one year or somewhere, and I think for Liam Cahill, it's the job he wanted. He's coming out of a disappointing finish to what started very well in Waterford, but he also landed into Tipperary, I think, at a time that there was a big transition as well. You have a lot of big household names that were coming to the end of their careers, kind of from the end of Liam Sheedy and the handover to Liam Cahill, you had the Colin Bonner in between that. So they're probably not, as Sarah said, there's some nice young lads coming through. What we're seeing now is that there's a big step up from under 19 or under 17 and under 20 to jump up. So it's not simple for Liam Cahill. And I think the Tipperary public, if they're being as honest as they can be, they would acknowledge that Tipperary are in a building phase at the moment. They're trying to, even that team that won in 19, there's a lot of them guys now have moved on. So you have to look at it and say, look, it's not simple. They're also at a time when Cork, or particularly Limerick, are at a generational team in Limerick, which is not simple. Clare very strong, Cork coming with under 20 success to build there. So Tip are trying to play catch up, and I think it's even probably overall the structures and everything, they're looking at that more than any other county that has fallen behind. So I suppose Liam Cahill is trying to, like you said there, maybe take a bit of pressure off. But sometimes are you better off just let the boys do the talking on the pitch and just circle the wagons, keep it nice and tight. But Liam is a straight shooter. I like that with him. He'll call it as he sees it, and I think that honesty will resonate well with the players, and it should resonate with the public. But I think they have to be patient and see where they sit in the land of hurling at the moment. And like for them now, the big thing is a strong league campaign. Bring through those young lads. Bring through, Andrew Ormonds, Dylan Walsh, like a lot of these guys, McCarthy as well. All young guys. They need all those. Garrett O'Connor getting another cup. They need to build a good, strong squad for a Munster campaign. So they have to have a little bit of patience with these guys. They have not a massive amount of championship experience under their belts. So there has to be a little bit of patience with that. But yeah, look, I think Tip, if they can get out, if they can be one of the three teams get out of Munster, that would be a fair achievement.
Eddie, Sarah,
sorry, I was just going to say that if Tip were in Leinster, we probably wouldn't be having such a demising conversation about this group of players, because I think they'd fare better in Leinster, say, just with the current state of Cork, Limerick and Clare and how strong they are. Tip, Kilkenny, then Galway, then Dublin. That's kind of the scenario. They're just very unlucky that they're in a very, as Eddie said, a very competitive Munster Championship.
I said there's a few Munster counties that wouldn't mind swapping if they were given the opportunity, but unfortunately that's not the way things work at the moment. Sarah, Eddie, thanks so much for joining me.